Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Please be seated. Down to me. Welcome, everyone. Extraordinary meeting of the Council called for Wednesday the 26th January 2022 at 6 p.m. to consider the appointment of a Section 151 officer. Evacuation procedures. The fire drill is not expected this evening. If the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quietly and quickly and calmly through the entrances that you came in. But do not use the lifts. Once outside, please gather outside the Virgin Money building, bank opposite the front of this council house. If you do need any assistance, please make officers aware that you need that assistance now. And also, please make sure that your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. The meeting will be recorded at the first part. Obviously, this is a confidential item to be discussed, so that will come into place as we move through the meeting. So I'll move on to apologies. Apologies, do we have? I've had apologies from. I've lost my papers already. It's a good start. Councillor Carl Evans. Oh, sorry, start with the Mayor, obviously. From the Mayor, Councillor Rob Tromans and Mrs Mandy Tromans, both of whom have been tested positive, as you're probably aware. Councillor Carl Evans, Councillor Hayden Walmsley, and Councillor Brett Beethan. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Got apologies from Councillor Rudkin and Councillor T. Shepherd.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other apologies? Okay, if you note those, please. Item 3, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosory pecuniary interests or other interests in matters in consideration today. Any not already noted? Okay, thank you. So we then move on to I've lost it. Yes, the announcements. Sorry, I'm just looking under the exceptions for the general rule. I beg your pardon. So we then move on to item 4, announcements. We do have an announcement from Councillor Chris Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Given that this is a matter of some importance to the residents of the borough, I'd like to take this opportunity to make a statement to full council about the current recycling bin strike that we are facing. And I feel it is important to take this opportunity to give an update to all members and the public. I will apologise for the length of the statement, but I'm trying to give as much detail as I possibly can so that all members are aware of the present situation. This is the earliest chance that I've had to inform council, and it may seem like a novel concept in this chamber for a cabinet member to do this, but as I've said many times, this council is more open and transparent under this new Conservative administration. As members will be aware, there is presently a strike between Unite the Union and Coventry City Council over their pay and terms and conditions. I would like to emphasise that this is a dispute between Coventry Council and their employees, and their dispute has nothing to do with the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. Yet, we are affected by the continuing strike. That is because our recycling collection was contracted out by the last Labour Council to Coventry City Council with no competitive tendering process. This was in 2018. I would like to say from the outset that I wish to express my thanks to those drivers and binmen from Coventry who have been coming over to Nuneaton and Bedworth and doing the job that they are paid to do. The dispute is mainly with the HGV drivers, and I'm aware that there are potentially more binmen who would like to come over and complete their daily job for Nuneaton and Bedworth, but are prevented from doing so by striking drivers. Thanks to those men and women who have continued to do their job, it means that approximately 2/3 of recycling rounds are being completed on any given day. This means that we have 1/3 which are not. Initially, the strike was scheduled to be on odd days in January and into February and March. Unite the Union have now escalated their action into an all-out dispute for the next 2 months. It is my understanding, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that Unite the Union have so far refused to go to arbitration through ACAS. I have to wonder that if Unite is so convinced of the merits of its case, why it has refused. I suspect they know the answer, and it would not be favourable to them. The strikers are demanding pay rises beyond the financial ability of Coventry City Council and would break equal pay legislation. It would also put additional financial pressure on key priority services like adult social care and vulnerable children. They claim they are on, quote, poverty pay. Yet according to their council, the average wage of a HGV driver is £34,000, with some reaching as much as £54,000. The union disputes this, but given that Coventry City pay the wages, I suspect that the council know what their pay bill is. £34,000, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would not class that as poverty pay. That is a wage that many of our residents in Nuneaton and Bedworth can only dream and aspire to. I certainly know that I, for one, don't earn anywhere near that sort of salary. I'm afraid that the strikers are significantly divorced from reality over this. They have a pay deal on the table to amend their contract to 52 weeks a year rather than 51. When I go to work, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I, and I suspect most of the people in our borough, have a 52-week contract. They have been offered £3,500 tax-free to buy out their contract, and there is also an offer of £1,300 for the lowest paid workers as a pay increase. To me, that seems like a perfectly reasonable deal. Of course, whilst they are on strike, the strikers will not be paid. If they are supposedly on poverty pay, I am forced to wonder how they can afford to live with no pay for 2 months. Whilst this issue remains unresolved, Coventry residents are suffering. And our residents here in Nuneaton and Bedworth are being hit hard too. I can assure Council that this Conservative administration takes this issue extremely seriously. As leader, I have implemented an emergency cabinet subcommittee that meets every Monday with the leading officers to discuss the progress of the Coventry strike and the actions that we can take ourselves to deal with the worst effects. The solutions are not ideal and are considerably complicated further by the legislation surrounding strikes. It would appear that the law provides more protections to the unions than it does to innocent taxpayers of Nuneaton and Bedworth. I have instructed that where a recycling bin has not been collected, if a resident puts their recycling in a bin liner at the side of their bin on the next black bin collection day, that this will be collected by either our waste operatives or an additional van and staff that we are allocating to collect the additional waste. This is a temporary measure for the duration of the strike only, and this is a perfectly reasonable management request to our staff during these emergency times. Secondly, we are in the process of obtaining permission from the Environment Agency for emergency permits to have deposit sites at 3 locations in our borough for residents to bring their recycling if they can. I can't actually give the details of those proposed locations yet until we do actually have the permission from the Environment Agency. When these sites are operational, I would ask that residents who are able to drop off their recycling at these sites do so, as this means that our black waste operatives can complete their normal rounds as quickly as possible. But where residents are unable to do so, we will work to maintain the additional collections with the black bin. I am certainly not going to give ludicrous advice, as appears to be the case in Coventry, that you can cycle with your waste to one of the drop-off sites. Mr. Deputy Mayor, we are working hard to limit the impact of the strike between Unite the Union and Coventry City Council on our borough. It will undoubtedly place an additional financial burden on this council. We would appear to be the collateral damage to the unions in this dispute. The costs to us are yet to be assessed and worked out fully. But I can confirm that we will only be paying Coventry City Council for work that is completed under the contract and not the normal value of the contract. We will pay what we owe for services rendered and not a penny more. In closing, Mr Deputy Mayor, I would like to reiterate my thanks to those Coventry workers who are continuing to turn up to work and are providing a service to our residents. To me, that highlights the best of what local councils and public service do for our residents. This Conservative administration is doing everything we possibly can within the law to defend the interests of our residents. We have no say in this dispute. If the trade unions are so sure of the righteousness of their case and their argument, then they should sit down with the arbitrators and test it. Causing misery to the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth, and indeed Coventry, is neither fair nor proportionate. I make this plea to the strikers. The offer you have is reasonable and far more than most of your affected communities are getting. Please take the pay rise you have been offered and serve the communities you are employed to support. Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. We have no further announcements. Move on to item 5, public speaking. There is one item of, where a question has been submitted, and the Chief Executive, Brent Davis, will read that out.
Thank you. So this question is to the Leader of the Council, from Mr Sam Margrave. This meeting is being held in secret using the exclusion of the public and press. But you have criticised decisions being made behind closed doors in the past and promised a new era of transparency. Is it a legal requirement to hold this meeting excluding the public and press, or a choice by councillors to creep back into old ways that saw secret meetings at the Town Hall for decades? And if it is not a legal requirement for councillors to exclude the public and press, and councillors have a choice whether to be open and transparent or have a culture of taking decisions behind closed doors, will you choose to allow the public to stay and see the debate and be open about reasons for your decisions, and commit not to create a culture that hides things from local people, whether it be this council meeting, standards committee, the borough plan, or decisions about senior appointments, spending taxpayers' money, or other decisions you make in the name of the public, so we can see what you're up to and have continued trust in this new council, which is doing new things. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Brent. I believe, Councillor Wilson, you're going to respond.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor. I've only seen this question at about 1 o'clock today because it was sent through late, but I will give an answer to the question. The answer is we are absolutely, on this side of the chamber, a transparent administration. And I would think that my statement I gave just a few moments ago would evidence the fact that we are doing things differently and we are putting information out there to the residents and being as open and transparent as we can be. However, the item that we are considering is the appointment of a Section 151 officer. This isn't a general point of policy or principle. This is a specific individual's employment. They aren't even technically our employee yet, and neither I, nor I would suspect Mr Margrave, would want the details of their contract of employment or employment offers broadcast out there for all and sundry to see. That isn't fair, nor, to coin a phrase, Mr Deputy Mayor, playing cricket. I believe that it is only fair and proportionate that when we are dealing with an individual's contract of employment, we consider it carefully and confidentially, because it could have wide-ranging ramifications for their employment now or their future employment prospects down the line, because I am not going to presuppose the outcome of the debate later on. It is, I can confirm, an absolute legal requirement to do so, to have this in confidential session, and wherever possible we try to have things out in the open. As for other committees, that is a matter for those committees to decide based on the merits of the case before them. But this is absolutely, Mr Deputy Mayor, a more open, transparent and democratic council under this new leadership. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. could you please ensure that that response is sent as well to Mr Margrave? Thank you. We then move on to the item on the agenda, the exclusion of public and press. So I'll give just a moment for people to move or just wait while the recording is switched off. Just a moment. Councillor Condacall.
Thank you. I think we're allowed to speak on this thing before we take the vote to exclude the press and public. Yeah, no, but you're getting rid of the press and public.
Sorry, I was moving to the exclusion of press and public, but the recommendation hasn't been moved yet. Councillor Wilson, you wanted to move that.
Mr Deputy Mayor, I will so move, and if there is a debate, I would obviously come back to answer any of the pertinent points.
Is that seconded? Councillor Golby, thank you.
I'll second that and reserve my right to speak.
So it's been moved and seconded. Anybody wants to wish to speak? Councillor Condacall.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I totally understand why the vast majority of this document needs to be private and confidential. But I think that the reason to exclude the public actually caused a lot of fear and trepidation. And I asked actually that we actually make section 3 public, which doesn't contain any confidential information. So at least the public actually know what we're doing. Because I say quite often we have these confidential documents, and if you look at the document, every section virtually mentions the name of the candidate and all sorts of confidential details. But I think section 3 does actually say what the background is of us actually losing a section 106 officer, 151 officer, and needing a new 151 officer. It is a really important thing that the public understand that. So I ask maybe if you take legal opinion as to whether we could just publish or tell people a little bit of what's happening rather than go into secret before we've even, I say section 3 is not confidential in my view. So if we could do that, section 3, and then go into confidential, that would be my preference.
Thank you, Councillor Condacall. Any other member wishing to speak on this? Thank you, Mr Richardson. Is any other member wishing to speak before? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I think that the title of the actual item which is on the papers is quite self-explanatory. It is appointment of a Section 151 officer. I believe that is quite enough information to be able for the reasonable member of the public to be able to infer that we are dealing with employment matters on this occasion. However, what I would say is it is a matter of public record. We don't currently have a permanent Director of Finance and Enterprise, and that they resigned with effect from June. I think it was June, but whatever it was, it certainly has been a matter of public record. The documents highlighting that we have an interim Section 151 officer are a matter of public record. The fact that we have been out to recruitment has been out there on websites, so that wouldn't be breaking any confidentiality clauses. And the levels of salary, again, were published on there for the terms of the job offer. So I don't believe that actually having this item in confidential session is debarring any member of the public from making a reasoned inference as to what the actual title is, which is appointment of Section 151 officer. If Councillor Condacall believes that my explanation isn't reasonable, then he is, of course, perfectly entitled to vote against the recommendation. But as someone who works in employment matters, perhaps he's forgotten because it might have been so long since he's been employed, but that is a perfectly reasonable explanation to give.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Golby, you indicated, but obviously the proposer has now spoken. So no other indication, obviously. We'll move to a vote on that. So the recommendation is for the exclusion of the public and press for the next session. All in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. That brings us then on to item 7. So first of all, we need to put the.
Can we get confirmation of the live streams?
Yeah, we need to say we need to switch the live streams off and confirmation that public are out.